Hi guys, and welcome to my review for the THIEAUDIO HYPE4. I apologize for the delay, but the first unit never arrived and then I had to wait for the second unit to arrive. Anyway, it's finally here. I got the black and blue this time around, not the white one which I had ordered initially. And I'm actually glad I did that because I like the classy elegance that this unit has. I think the white one would have also been pretty interesting, but it was a little bit more over the top. I think especially the faceplate, at least on pictures, it looked just a little bit too blingy. But anyway, this is what I have. In terms of the unboxing, it's a simple box. It comes with the inside. It brings this case. Inside of the case, we have some tips, some foams, and then these silicone ones. I'm actually using the stock tips. They work perfectly, so there was no need for me to change. Although I did try it out with some KBE Euro 7s just to see. And then it's got a nice cable. It doesn't tangle or anything. It's a nice cable. I would have liked at this price point. I'm talking $399. I would have liked for the cable to have been modular, but it's not a deal breaker. It's a nice cable, and then in the actual shell itself, it's a very nice shell. It's a big IM. It's not a small IM. It's an IM a little bit on the big side, and especially when you consider it's got 4 PAs and 2 dynamic drivers. Fair enough, the dynamic drivers are in that quasi isobaric kind of configuration, and they do need a little bit of space. But it's a bigger shell, but still being big, that doesn't mean it fits uncomfortable or that it gets fatiguing or anything of the sort. No, it fits very nicely. I had no issues. It isolates quite well once the the tip is inserted nice and deep. I'm actually using a medium-sized tip here. You can't see inside the shell because it's completely darkened. What else can I say? That's basically it. It's a nicely built shell. It's got a nice faceplate design. It's got the branding there on the faceplate. On the back of the shell, it says the serial number and the actual model number HYPE4, which I think is a nice little detail to avoid confusion, because some IMs are so similar today to one to another that it's easy to sometimes get them confused. So I like those little details. It's got this venting hole here on the side of the shell in a position which is definitely not going to be obstructed by the ear or anything of the sort, and that's basically it. So it's a nicely built IM. It fits beautifully. It's got acceptable accessories. Like I said, I would have just liked the cable to be modular, but that's not a deal breaker. And costs $399. It's part of the HYPE series, which is made up of the two, and that costs $299, and also the HYPE 10, which costs $899, and that's 10 BAs. What else do I have here? Not so much as to compare, but to position the HYPE4. I've got here the Moondrop, the Blessing 3, and that's around $319. I've got here the variations, which you can get it anywhere around $450, $460. So it's just slightly more expensive, and it's also a tribrid. You guys know that I don't really usually like to mix tribrids and hybrids and so on and so forth. I like to keep things within the same type of style. But anyway, I've got it here. Oh, the Blessing 3, as you know as well, it's a 4+2, same configuration as the HYPE. This is a tribrid. I've got here the Tansio Mirai 10th anniversary, and that's also got a nice configuration in terms of it's got the BAs, it's got the dual diaphragm dynamic driver, and then it's got this what you see here, this other driver or whatever you want to call it, which is basically something very similar to the system used by LITZ as well, which is basically a system to do away with any driver flex and resonances that are internally present in the IM. So it's a nice little detail, a nice little well, detail is not the correct word, but it's a nice little feature that this IM has. And in terms of performance, it will supposedly do away with any resonances that can occur from the standing waves that might occur internally, by allowing them to be vented out in a more correct manner, and thus improve the overall bass performance. And then at the end here, I've got the Zigat Dos Cinco, which is 2 dynamic drivers and 3 BAs. So somewhat similar overall in terms of all the configurations. In terms of price, the THIEAUDIO is as well $399. There was talk that it was more expensive, but I've seen it mostly and mainly at that price. And the DOS Chinko is $249. So the most expensive here is the Variations. The cheapest here is the Ziget. But they all have the same sort of overall vibe. And what is that? They all have a tuck style bass in that. And in that aspect, I want to just say that the Blessing 3 is the one that's the least prominent, or the one that has the least of that. You could almost even argue that instead of being tucked, it's probably more of a gliding style of bass. But yeah, I thought it just made sense to have it here. To be honest, I don't have, unfortunately, the Dusk. That would have probably been a better option, but I thought it still made sense to have it here. While the others have got very much prominent or more prominent executions of that tuck style bass. I would say these three are basically almost identical. This is a little bit less so than these ones, and this one definitely less than the others, and that translates itself to having the most comparatively the most lean bass execution, although some could argue that leanness is actually more correct, as the bass execution than on the others can be perhaps a little bit too overly done. When we're talking about IEMs with a tuck style bass, one of the things that usually comes to mind is, or that he's talked about rather, is that, oh, then the mid bass performance suffers from that, and there's not much bass performance in terms of mid bass. It lacks a little bit of impact and so on. To be honest with you, I never really encountered that in the Variations. I never thought it was a real problem, at least not for me. And with the music that I listen to, it's never really been an issue. I mean, I take something like From Dusk to Dawn, which is a song that I usually like to listen to kind of get an idea of how the mid bass of a particular IEM is. And the Dust does it fine, as any one of the others also. Obviously, yes, the Blessing is the one that's the more lean in those hits. Well, that's quite noticeable. But the hits here, or the Variations, are very much prominent, very much there, and they are as well on the other three. So it's something that I think will be very much probably person to person dependent. How the IM fits, does it fit deep enough? I think those things are factors which will perhaps let that possible issue come through more or less. Anyway, jumping straight into the sound. Bass here on the THIEAUDIO, on the HYPE4, fantastic. That I think basically it covers it. It's got a very, very nicely executed bass. It's just the style of bass that I like. It's got a nice sub bass rumble. The mid bass is more than plenty. It's got nice cleanliness. It's clean. It's detailed. I mean, like I said, From Dusk to Dawn from George Duke, amazing. Little Fusion G minor from Jacques Lassois Trio as well, very nicely executed. Elephant from Karel Duboc, plenty of energy, nothing there. Feels Good from Rashaan Patterson, the same situation. Nice slam. It's a very nicely done bass. Deeper from Pete Belasco, beautiful bass line on that song. It's got the HYPE4 basically seduced me by having this bass line which is very evolving. It's got very much this kind of high quality subwoofer car system vibe going to it. And when I say high quality subwoofer system, what do I mean, so that you guys can maybe have an understanding? A lot of subwoofer systems in cars, because of the way that they are tuned to be more prominent for SPL applications and so on and so forth, they focus on the resonance frequency of the cabin as the main point of to be emphasized. And it's not that they can't go lower than that, they can, but then they have this very hard kind of hitting, let's say 40 to 60, 65 hertz area, and then it is so powerful, so over dominating, that you don't really feel the rumble down below that. In my particular car, back when I had a nice system, I had my boxes tuned to 22 hertz, and it gave that very effortless sub bass. It might have not had as much impact, a little bit higher up, but it just made that sub bass that you felt inside of you, and that's the sort of bass that the THIEAUDIO is capable of doing. And when I compare it here to, oops, my apologies. When I compare it here with the others, for example, the variations also gives me that sort of bass. The THIEAUDIO also, but it already has a sub bass execution which is more pending towards that being more prominent at specific frequencies. Although graphically, when I show you, they all graphed as similar, you know, they're very equal. You get the feeling when you listen to the 10th anniversary that it's more the 40, 50, 60, 70 hertz area that is the meat. While over here you get at least I get the feeling that it's the lower 30, 40, 50. That's where the majority of the energy is focused in. The same thing like in the variations. So bass, beautifully done. The transition from the bass into the mids, I think, is flawless. It's got a very nicely done pin again. Male vocals, female vocals come across very nicely. And when, for example, I compared it to the HYPE4, which I have a chat, but I thought it made no point in actually talking too much about it. You know, the HYPE4 sounded more V-shaped, more you have bass, you have treble, and then in the middle, yes, something is missing. On the HYPE4, no, I found, at least in this particular set, my set, and with what I listened to, I found a nice continuation of everything. It just, you know, let me see here. For example, let me get you a song so you guys can understand. Look, let's take Hotel California from the Eagles, for example. It's not that the HYPE4 doesn't do it well, it does it well, but you notice that there's something missing there in the middle in terms of overall energy. On the HYPE4, I don't get that vibe. I get a very continuous energy level. I get, oops, there must be some problem over there, my apologies. On the HYPE4, I get the feeling that everything is more evenly matched across, let's say, the majority of the frequency range, where the mids are the focus, and then the bass and the treble are there to complement, and everything just sounds more uniform. Let's put it that way. Okay, another song maybe that can also be used. Yeah, but I'm Gone, from Vanessa Fernandez. Again, beautifully done. Beautifully done. You know, at times I even got the vibe that the HYPE4 kind of reminded me of the SINGOT, the EM6L. Kind of reminded me of that type of execution. Anyway, continuing. So bass, top marks in my books. Mids, very nicely done, male and female vocals. And then the treble up top, you know, upper mids and treble, again, very nicely executed. It's got nice extension, plenty of twinklies and sparklies, nice feeling of space, nice technicalities overall. If in that aspect that the HYPE4, not that the HYPE4 was maybe lacking in technicalities overall, no, it wasn't. You could maybe argue that for the price it was lacking, but it wasn't really lacking. The HYPE4, I think, it hits the nail on the head. So technically, it does things very well. It's very efficient, but it doesn't give way to losing in terms of its organic, fun, musical side of it. So, you know, we sometimes talk about that IMs being more musical, IMs being more clinical, more technical orientated, and depending on how it's been done, they can sound maybe overly musical, and then they lose that technical capability, or then they're overly technical and they lose that musicality. One such IM, for example, is the Blessing 3. The Blessing 3, definitely mid-focused, definitely more technically capable, while then in terms of the musicality, at least with some of the songs that I listen to, it loses a little bit of that engagement, you lose a little bit of that musicality that I like. Over here I don't find that. I find it's been very well balanced. Chemistry of Love from Michael Franks as well. Beautifully done. Beautifully. It's really, really nicely done song. I mean, nothing that I can point out, oh, no, I would have liked it. No, nothing. So overall, in terms of the frequency response, I think it's beautifully done. I mean, I've got no complaints. It plays well. It plays genuinely well. And at least compared to the HYPE4, it's better. I haven't heard the HYPE10, so I can't really talk much about it. But from what I've read from other reviewers, the HYPE4 seems to be the go-to, the better one. Not only in terms of overall its price, because $399 is significantly cheaper than the $899 of the HYPE10. And from what I heard and read, there isn't that much more that you get in the HYPE10. Maybe a little bit more technical capabilities, from what I understand, but you lose out in terms of the overall musicality. So, you know, why go spend so much more money on the HYPE10, where then perhaps the most logical step would be the Monarch? Anyway, compare then here quickly with the, well, quickly, however long it takes, but compared here now with these IEMs, compared with the Blessing 3, and let me just say one thing before I continue. All of them play well, period. There isn't an IEM here that I say, no, I don't like, or I wouldn't recommend. No, they all play well, and they will all play differently to everyone. You know, there will be perhaps some people that will agree with certain models being more in synchrony with what they like, others less so. But there isn't an IEM here that you can outright say, no, it doesn't play well, and it just gets destroyed by the HYPE4. No, that's nonsense. Compared to the Blessing 3, like I was saying, you notice that the Blessing 3 is a leaner sounding IEM. So I would say that the Blessing 3 would make sense if you are a person that really likes or focuses on vocals and really likes its technical aspects. If you're a person that likes technicalities and vocals, then this is the one that makes sense. Compared vocals with vocals on the HYPE4, I prefer them on the HYPE4 just because they've got that little extra energy coming from behind, from the bass, which just complements things. I mean, Chemistry of Love, like from Michael Franks, as I was just mentioning, it just sounds so much more nice with the HYPE4 than it does on the Blessing. It's not that it's like a huge day and night difference, and you know, if I put it on the Blessing 3, I'm gonna, oh my god, it's my ears are, no, none of that. But it just sounds more engaging, more satisfying, more pleasing, more pleasant. You want to listen to it for longer, let's put it that way. Okay, so I'm not going to say it beats or doesn't beat. They're very different, okay? But I think the one that will be most pleasant or more pleasing or will satisfy more people will probably be the HYPE4. I would have liked to have had the Duskia, to be honest with you, although even if I had the Duskia, I would be comparing it in its analog setup, because as I mentioned when I talked about it, the Dusk being compared with, using the DSP, being compared in that manner with other IEMs in their analog format, I think is just wrong. And I don't agree with people doing that to then qualify or quantify how good the Dusk is or how bad it is. If you want to compare it analog with analog. So that's out of the way. Compared with the variations, I mean, the price difference here is not significant. It's basically the same price difference as exists with the Blessing 3, but a little bit more expensive. You are getting a tribrid. You're getting a very well built tribrid. I mean, there is nothing that you can fault on the variations, to be honest. And still today, it's probably still one of the better IEMs that Moondrop has done. Moondrop has been all over the place lately with bad quality control, bad build quality. You know, some IEMs are a hit, others are a total mess. But the variations, I think, has stood the test of time, and it's one of those IEMs, much like the KXSX was and the Starfield, that will be a marker for Moondrop in terms of what they can do and what they are not able to do. Comparatively with the HYPE4, they are very similar. The biggest thing that I noticed between the two of them is how much more information there is up top here. So in the treble and past, you know, above 10K, let's put it that way. Just there's a little bit more twinklies and sparklies, more cleanliness, more detail up top than this. The bass, although the bass is very similar, it's very much a hit or miss. There are some songs that I'll prefer the bass on the variations. There are other songs I'll prefer the bass on the HYPE4. So I can't really say, oh, I prefer this bass to that bass. I do get, however, the sensation that in more songs than others, the HYPE4 has perhaps just a little bit more mid-bass presence than the variation has. Okay, so overall, I would say these are interesting side grades to each other. Obviously, if you have a variations, you go buy the HYPE4. No, you don't. You know, you are undecided between the two. Which would I go for? Honestly, I would, to be very, very honest here, I would think I would probably go for the variations, just because of the fact that it's an icon IEM. It's an IEM that you know, is going to be something that when you talk about Moondrop, people will, okay, no, that's the business. All right, so that's that. Compared to the 10th anniversary from Tancio Mirai, and I had a lot of requests with regards to this, the biggest difference that you notice here is that this has got a little bit extra more detail up top than the 10th. So I would say that if you are ever so slightly sensitive to the amount of treble that the IEM has, then the Tancio would be the option to go for. If on top of that you are a person that likes to play around with your tuning a little bit, it's got these tuning switches which they work, they make a difference. I'm running it on the 011 position, which is the one that gives the most equal type of response to the HYPE4. But if you run it in the 111, it sounds as well good. It sounds really good. It's got loads of bass. I would say that in that position it's even got maybe a little bit more sub bass or a little bit more bass presence than the HYPE4. But overall the bass performance on either one of them is impressive. The difference that I did notice on the bass, as I mentioned earlier, is that this gives me the sensation of being more focused on that 30, 40, 50 hertz area, while this gives me the feeling that the bass is more 50, 60 hertz focused. Maybe it's down to the fact that this is using an 8mm driver, these are 10mm drivers. That could be a factor. It could be a factor as well because of the tuning. The reality is this: both of them play really well. Both of them have amazing bass. This has also got those tuning switches that can allow for a little bit more versatility in terms of the bass that you want to obtain. So it's very equally matched here. The one that would make probably the most sense in getting probably the 10th anniversary. Like I said, just purely because it's got those tuning switches, and it's the same price, so why not? But if you're happy with just having one position or one setting, and you like the sound, then I guess the HYPE4 would also be a good option. So yeah, it's whatever rocks your boat. Let's put it that way. Whatever rocks your boat is the one that will be the one that makes the most sense for you. And then finally, yeah, the DOS Chinko, which was actually a pleasant surprise. I was expecting, by looking at the graphs, I knew straight away that they were going to be sounding very similar. But I wasn't expecting it to be so similar like it was. Yes, this is lacking 1 BA compared to that. But honestly, for the majority of the time, I would say that the DOS Chinko is about 95%, 88 to 90% of the performance of the HYPE4. And when you factor in it's $150 cheaper, I would say that if you cannot afford the HYPE4, this would definitely be a good way to go. It's got very much the same sort of bass, not only in terms of overall tonality and timbre and performance, but then the male and female vocals also come across very much the same way. Just the extension, maybe I would give the overall extension here to the HYPE4. I would say it's got just a little bit extra more details up top, but then again it's also very much dependent on your ear, how the IM will fit, what you like listening to. So I can't outright say one beats the other. Here the main differentiating factor is this is $150 cheaper than that, and that's a lot of money. When you take that into account, that's a lot of money. These cost the same. This is about about $60 more expensive, and this is about $80 cheaper. Overall, if I want to kind of say, okay, you don't have any of these IEMs and you've selected these 5 IEMs as your choices or your possible choices, the one here straight away that is the most sensible choice is the DOS Chinko. The price that it has and the performance that it offers, phenomenal. It brings a decent cable, but it's got everything on the DOS Chinko it's ticked the right boxes. So it's the one IM that straight away is the most sensible one to go for out of all of them. If we are talking then in terms of overall performance, again, like I said, the differences here are so minor between. Here the difference is noticeable, but the differences between the variations, the 10th and the DOS Chinko are so, and obviously the HYPE4, or the differences in sound here are so minor and so very much song dependent that you can't go wrong with any one of the 4. Honestly, you really can't. Okay. Anyway, let me just show you the graphs and we'll wrap it up. Hi guys, and welcome now here to the graph section for the THIEAUDIO HYPE4. Let me just clear some graphs here so we can start seeing things in a little bit better manner. Okay, there we go. Let's start then with the graph for the HYPE4, and this is the graph of the HYPE4. As you can see, sub-bass focus, tucked, by 200 hertz, it's flat, and it's got this then very progressive slow pinna gain, peaks at close to 3k and then just drops off ever so slowly, and then some extension, well, quite a bit of extension past 10k, which is noticeable. So overall, a very nicely done tuning. I mean, just for the sake of comparison, and I'm just going to show you here quickly the THIEAUDIO, the HYPE4, at least my HYPE4, so that you guys can understand what I said earlier. Excuse me, when I was talking about my apologies. I've definitely got to find a way of getting my squig link functioning, so that I can make things significantly easier for everybody. Okay, let me just change the color here to black, and there we go. Okay, so I'm going to normalize it at 1k. There we go. There we go. All right. Now, the reason why I mentioned earlier that I found the sound of the HYPE4 to be more V-shaped is precisely because of this extra energy that they've given here at the treble. So the extra energy that they've given here on the treble makes it sound more like this area here is not as present. It's basically the same, as you can see, very much the same. Even the bass, although there's this difference here, but it's basically the same. You don't really notice. And you would think that this here, it's got more detail and so on than the HYPE4, but overall the extra detail that maybe on occasions I found that existed was more in your face. It was more there and not as well balanced and as coherent as what was coming from behind, which is something that in the case of the HYPE4, everything just sounds very much kind of like I said, you know, it's all at the same level. Everything is at the same level, bass, mids, highs, everything is at the same level. And then when you scale it, it continues in that same way. While on the HYPE2, the scaling is not done as well as in the case of the HYPE4. So this is the HYPE4. Okay. Now compare then to what I selected, and let's start here with the Dos Cinco. There we go, number 4. The Dos Cinco, as you can see, is also got very much that tuck style of bass, and then, you know, a very slow progressive pinna, and then very much plateaued across the rest here, and then drops off past 10k by not being as energetic. And this is noticeable, but what is also noticeable is the bass. It is very similar, but when you listen to specific songs, okay, you notice that the sub bass rumble is not as much on the Dos Cinco as it is on the HYPE4. Is it a huge difference? No, it isn't. This is just me, you know, being maybe nitpicking, and because I know some of these songs so well that I can pick up on the slight differences. I would say that the biggest difference, or the biggest culprit for that difference, is maybe just an overall tonality and timbre. I like the tonality and the timbre of the HYPE4 very much, and I think that is the main issue here, or the main factor which makes you feel that there's the difference in sound. Again, let me repeat, it's not a huge difference, be it one or the other. You can't really go wrong, be it one or the other. Depending on your ears, maybe you won't even agree with what I'm saying, but you do notice there's a little bit of a difference. But overall, as you can see, the execution is basically the same. I mean, it's honestly, it's basically the same. So that's that out of the way. Let's show here the Blessing 3 and get that one out of the way as well. The bass is definitely different. I mean, yes, you could probably say, and I think it's more correct for me to say that this is a gliding style of bass instead of a tuck style of bass. But gliding, usually there's a little bit more energy here in this 100, 200, 300 hertz area. There's more of a little bit of energy here. So I would say that this is maybe, if I want to be absolutely correct, a lean glide. Okay, and that's why then it doesn't have maybe the same impact as some other IEMs that have the same style of gliding bass execution. But when you do compare the two, yes, the mids for the most part as well are very similar. The extension of the HYPE4 is more prominent, but the biggest thing here is you don't have as much mid bass and sub bass energy. And if that will be a delight for some in terms of it opens up the mids, and if the mids are already about the same energy level, they even sound like they are even more energetic. To others like myself, it's not that I dislike the Blessing 3 in any way, I don't, but I just find that it's the HYPE4 plays better, what I like listening to, than the Blessing 3. There's more times that it does it better than the Blessing 3. So you know, HYPE4 takes the one here. Based on that, I just like the way that the overall timbre and tonality and that engagement, that organic type of evolving sound is more to my liking in the HYPE4 as on the compared to the Blessing 3. Okay, so that's Blessing 3 out of the way. Let's compare it, why not, straight away with the variations, which is this one here. Again, variations, as you can see, very similar in terms of the bass, and the PENON gain, and then the drop off. Although you see this big difference here, when you actually listen to it, like I said, to my ears, I hear quite a bit more detail on the variations than what I do on the HYPE4. Is it a huge deal breaker of a difference? No, it isn't. But you notice that there's a little bit more twinklies and sparklies, definitely a little bit more twinklies and sparklies. In terms of the bass, like I said, sometimes they trade blows, and sometimes I will prefer it on the Blessing, sometimes I will prefer it on the Blessing, my apologies. Sometimes I'll prefer it on the variations, sometimes I'll prefer it on the HYPE4. The differences are not big, and I think that difference that makes me prefer one to the other is mainly down to what we have up top here, which affects indirectly what we have at the bottom there. Okay, so it's what is happening up top here that will make then this area here sound better sometimes with certain songs on the variations. It sounds better sometimes with certain songs, with other songs on the HYPE4. But either way, you know, you can't really go wrong. And then finally, the one that a lot of people asked me to compare it with, which is the THIEAUDIO, the 10th anniversary. Okay, this is with the setting in the 011, and this is with the setting in the 111. All the settings, you know, all the switches up. In the 111, let me just quickly take away that one here. In the 111, you get a little bit more bass impact, but you lose a little bit here, and overall the tonality just closes down slightly. It just becomes a little bit darker sounding. It's not a big thing, but it just becomes a little bit darker sounding. So ultimately, I prefer listening to it in this setting. Let me actually change it to red so it stands out more. So I like listening more to the 10th anniversary in the 011, which the bass in terms of at least graph sounds the same, and then the mids and so on sound more or less the same. But don't forget, 8mm driver, 10mm driver on the HYPE4. So being an 8mm driver, this area here then is able to just shine a little bit more, and it doesn't overpower the HYPE4. It's basically the same. Where you do notice difference is the HYPE4, it's got more extension, you know, past 10K, there's more detail there, and while the THIEAUDIO always sounds just even more warmer, even more just a little bit more old school, and the other one is old school but a little bit more detailed old school, if it makes sense what I'm saying. Okay, in terms of overall preference, I mean, like I said, in the bass, it's just that one gives me the feeling that it's focusing more on the 50-60 hertz area, while the other one gives me the feeling that it's capable of going down more, you know, lower. Looking at the graphic, you wouldn't say that, but when you listen to it, that's what I perceive. That's what I pick up on, and this is one of those times where the graphs don't really say anything. You know, the THIEAUDIO does have the fact that the switches allow for this adjustment of the tuning and so on and so forth. That could be a very positive choice if you like doing that, but you can't go wrong with either one. The truth is that, again, just to recap, the biggest difference between the two of them is in the detail, or the amount of detail that you have in the HYPE4 versus the 10th. It's present. It's not a huge difference, but it's noticeable and it's present. Okay, anyway guys, I hope I was able to position the HYPE4 decently for you guys so that you understand what it's all about, and that's basically it. Any other questions you might have, please feel free to ask, and as always, like and subscribe. As I've said already before, let's make the channel grow. Let's get this to 10,000 people. It's about time. I've got 10,000 people, I see there's a lot of engagement. I see there's a lot of people actually watching my videos, but I would like to see the likes there as well, and I would like to see the followers. So, you know, let's do this. All right, you take care now. Bye bye.